99% of people spend their entire lives believing one lie about themselves, and it quietly destroys everything. Today, you're going to uncover that lie, and once you do, you'll never see yourself the same way again. There is a silent prison that doesn't need walls, guards, or locked doors. Millions wake up inside it every morning and never realize they're carrying the key in their own pocket. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter how hard you work. As long as one quiet belief follows you everywhere you go, every opportunity will feel too big, every room will feel like it belongs to someone else, and every dream will seem reserved for people who were simply born different. That belief is inferiority. Not weakness, not failure, not lack of intelligence. Just the quiet conviction that everyone else deserves more than you. The strange part is that most people don't even recognize it. They mistake it for humility. They call it being realistic. They tell themselves they're only staying in their lane. But deep inside, they're shrinking. And every day, they shrink a little more. A young man once walked into an interview carrying years of experience, impressive skills, and genuine talent. Before he even shook the interviewer's hand, he had already decided he wasn't good enough. His posture revealed it. His voice revealed it. His answers revealed it. He didn't lose because someone else was better. He lost because he unconsciously gave away the authority he already possessed. Most people think confidence begins after success. Life teaches the opposite. Success often arrives after confidence, and confidence begins the moment you stop asking the world for permission to exist. Here's where everything changes. The greatest limitation isn't outside you. It isn't your income, your education, your background, or your circumstances. It's the invisible story you've been telling yourself for years. A story repeated so often that it no longer sounds like a story. It sounds like reality. Every choice begins to orbit around it. You avoid speaking because someone else knows better. You stay in the same job because people like me don't become leaders. You settle for relationships that drain you because this is probably all I deserve. Little by little, your life becomes evidence supporting a belief that was never true to begin with. But then something unexpected happens. One day, you meet someone whose confidence seems almost effortless. Not louder, not more talented, simply more certain. And suddenly you wonder, what do they know that I don't? The answer is surprisingly simple. They stop measuring their worth against other people. Most people spend years looking through someone else's window instead of building their own house. Comparison feels harmless. Sometimes it even feels motivating. But comparison slowly teaches your brain a dangerous lesson. It convinces you that your value depends on someone else's achievements. Someone gets promoted, you feel smaller. Someone buys a bigger house. You question your own progress. Someone receives applause. You begin doubting your own voice. Without realizing it, you've handed control of your self-worth to strangers who don't even know your name. And that's one of the most expensive trades a person can ever make. The real tragedy isn't that others succeed. The tragedy is forgetting that life was never designed to be a race between different people. It was designed to be a journey toward becoming more fully yourself. A towering oak doesn't compete with a river. The river doesn't envy the mountain. The stars don't apologize because they shine at different times. Nature never compares. Only people do. And when we compare endlessly, we stop growing naturally. This is where almost everyone goes wrong. They try to become more impressive instead of becoming more authentic. But authenticity creates a kind of confidence that comparison never can. And once you understand why your mind became trapped in this cycle in the first place, you'll never see yourself the same way again. No one is born feeling inferior. A child doesn't enter the world believing they are less important than anyone else. That belief is learned. It arrives quietly, sometimes through criticism, sometimes through rejection, sometimes through silence. A little girl proudly shows her drawing. Someone laughs. A boy asks a question in class. Everyone laughs louder. A teenager dreams out loud. Someone tells him to be realistic. None of these moments seem large enough to change a life. But the human mind remembers emotion far longer than facts. Eventually, those moments gather together like tiny drops filling a bucket. Years later, an adult stands before an opportunity and hears an old voice that isn't even their own. You'll embarrass yourself. You don't belong here. People like you never succeed. The strange part is that the voice sounds familiar. So familiar that it feels like truth. But familiarity isn't proof, it's repetition. Here's what changes everything. Your brain is less interested in what's true than in what's repeated. Repeat doubt long enough, and it becomes identity. Repeat courage long enough, and that becomes identity too. History quietly proves this again and again. Many remarkable people weren't extraordinary because they never experienced insecurity. They became extraordinary because they refused to let insecurity become their permanent address. They learned something most people never do. Feelings aren't commands. They are signals. You can feel afraid and still move. You can feel uncertain and still decide. You can feel unprepared and still begin. The emotion doesn't determine the outcome. Your response does. Think about a man standing at the edge of a frozen lake. He wants to cross, but every fear tells him the ice will break. He waits. Another traveler studies the same lake. He tests the surface, moves carefully, adjusts when necessary. Soon he's halfway across. The difference wasn't courage versus fear. Both felt fear. Only one refused to let fear become the decision maker. Inferiority works exactly the same way. It whispers predictions disguised as facts. It says, they'll reject you. They'll laugh. They're better. They've already won. Most people obey these predictions without ever checking whether they're true. This creates an invisible habit, the habit of self-elimination. Before life says no, you say no to yourself. Before someone rejects your idea, you never share it. Before opportunity disappears, you walk away first. It's one of the quietest forms of self-sabotage because it feels responsible. But responsibility without courage becomes surrender. The real reason is much deeper. Inferiority isn't actually about other people. It's about identity. If you secretly believe you're less than, your mind begins protecting that identity. Every compliment feels uncomfortable. Every achievement feels temporary. Every success feels like luck, because accepting your own value would require changing the story you've believed for years. And changing identity feels dangerous, even when the new identity is healthier. Psychologists sometimes call this consistency. People naturally protect the person they believe they are. That's why external success alone rarely fixes internal insecurity. A promotion cannot erase years of self-doubt. More money cannot purchase self-respect. Recognition cannot permanently replace self-belief. Without inner change, every external victory eventually feels empty. But then something remarkable begins to happen. A person decides to question one belief, just one. Instead of saying, I'm not confident, they ask, what if confidence is simply something I practice? Instead of saying, I'm not a leader, they ask, what would a leader do in this situation? The questions change. The behavior changes. Eventually, the identity changes. Growth rarely begins with certainty. It begins with curiosity. There's another story worth remembering. An experienced sculptor once looked at an enormous block of stone. Others saw weight. He saw possibility. Days passed, then weeks. Piece after piece fell away. Someone finally asked, how did you know what was inside? The sculptor smiled. I didn't create it. I only removed what didn't belong. Confidence works the same way. You're not manufacturing a new person. You're uncovering the one who has been hidden beneath years of unnecessary doubt. And once that hidden person begins to emerge, the world starts responding differently. Not because the world changed, because you did. But there is one final step almost no one talks about, the step that transforms confidence into a way of living, rather than a temporary feeling. The day you stop feeling inferior isn't the day you become perfect. It's the day you stop demanding perfection before allowing yourself to participate. That single decision quietly changes everything. You raise your hand. You speak first. You submit the application. You start the business. You have the difficult conversation. Not because certainty arrived, because waiting for certainty finally stopped making sense. Confidence grows in motion, never in hiding. Think of a lighthouse. It doesn't chase ships across the ocean. It simply stands where it belongs and shines. People who know their worth become like that. They stop exhausting themselves trying to convince everyone else. They focus on becoming brighter instead of becoming louder. Ironically, that's when people begin noticing them. Discipline also begins to feel different. It is no longer punishment. It becomes self-respect. You exercise because your future matters. You study because your potential deserves investment. You protect your time because your life has value. Everything changes once your actions begin matching your self-worth. Most people try to think their way into confidence. The wiser path is to behave your way into it. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes evidence. Every difficult choice becomes proof. Every small victory whispers, I can trust myself. And trust is the foundation beneath every lasting confidence. There will still be difficult mornings. There will still be criticism. Some people will misunderstand you. Others will underestimate you. Let them. Another person's opinion is only information. It doesn't have to become your identity. The strongest people aren't those who never experience doubt. They're the ones who refuse to build a home inside it. Years from now, you'll probably forget many ordinary days. But you'll remember the day you finally stopped asking whether you were enough, because that question was never leading you toward freedom. It was keeping you trapped. Life has a curious way of rewarding those who quietly believe they belong. Doors that once seemed impossible begin opening. Conversations become easier. Decisions become clearer. Not because life suddenly becomes fair, but because you finally stop standing in your own way. The greatest victory isn't proving your worth to the world. It's no longer needing to. When that happens, something peaceful replaces the endless pressure to compete. You begin creating instead of comparing, serving instead of seeking approval, growing instead of pretending. And perhaps that's the deepest lesson of all. Your value was never something you had to earn, only something you had to recognize. The day you stop feeling inferior, you don't become someone else. You finally allow yourself to become who you've been capable of becoming all along. So walk into tomorrow differently. Speak with quiet conviction. Stand without apology. Treat yourself with the same dignity you willingly offer others, because the world doesn't simply respond to what you know. It responds to what you believe about yourself. Choose that belief carefully. It may become the invisible force that shapes every chapter of the life still waiting to be written.